makes me feel like a man.
You want every team to lose any other game? Sorry. Bailey Zappi just put another dime. You know what? Whoa, time out. Are you kidding? That's what I'm gonna try to drop a mic.
Welcome in to the Warner Brothas Podcast. My name is Keenan, joined by my brother Kyle, of course, in person again, which is great. I do leave soon, so this will probably be the last in-person one that we're going to be doing for a while, but the podcasts are obviously coming. Kyle, how you doing?
I'm decent. How you doing?
Good. Playing basketball Saturday, how was that for you? How do you feel? Because I know you were worried that you were getting a torn ACL. You're walking fine now, so at least you didn't do that.
You know what? My body actually feels great for not playing as long as I did.
Yep.
It was basically like coming out of retirement,
Mm-hmm.
but I was okay. You know, I feel like I didn't try to make too many sudden movements.
Yep.
But I actually moved well defensively. I moved great defensively, but I feel like I moved okay defensively, which, you know, usually your legs kind of feel like, I don't know, either super tight or, you know, but I actually had okay rhythm for not playing for such a long time. So
Yeah.
I'm happy about that. I want to get back into it. But,
Yeah.
you know, we'll see.
I was in the same kind of boat. Now, I didn't have as long as a layoff as you, but in Johnson City, ETSU, the college that I'm close to, they're out for the summer, and since students who are not going to summer school, they can't get in there, we're actually not able to get in. So I've only played like 2 times in the last couple months, but I think us playing early and then getting late actually helped me get in a rhythm, and so then I felt like I played pretty well throughout the entirety of the games. We did have a controversial ending at the end of ours that led to a couple of our friends going back and forth. Shout out Joe DeZazzo. But, so, first thing I want to ask you about real quick, how do you feel about the Caruso Giddy trade?
Oh, went from pickup basketball to...
Pick up basketball to NBA. We're saying basketball, but...
So me and Brandon Petty, we were talking about this the day it happened.
Yep.
And I think player for player, it's a really good trade. I think it's a really fair trade.
I agree.
Because honestly, so I know Giddy doesn't have the best reputation off the court.
Mm-hmm.
He's got kind of a discolored reputation now, to say the least.
Yeah.
And but the thing is, he is really a top level prospect. I don't even know if he's 21 yet. He might be 21.
If he did, he turned it like this year.
And he's someone who could give you I think he averages somewhere around 15, 7, and 6. That's just me guessing.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a top level rebounder. He's a player I feel like you could put on any team and he'd make them better.
Yeah.
So Chicago really got an elite prospect and they gave up an elite role player.
Mm-hmm.
You gave a Marcus Smart level, defensive player. So in a way, that's what OKC needed. Yep. Giddy actually shot really well in that first round, not as well in the second round. And now they get someone who can probably hit a corner three, give you elite defense, and you only need him for 20, 25 minutes a game. And in Chicago, you basically, now that I'm thinking about this, honestly, you basically get Lonzo Ball, right? Like the type of player Lonzo Ball was. Maybe not the defender that Lonzo Ball is, but Josh Giddey's someone who does a lot of what Lonzo does. Yeah. Obviously, Lonzo's a better shooter now, but... So, I mean, hey, you'll have Lonzo coming back. You'll have Josh Giddey. You got other weird players there. Good players. But you got Kobe Wright. Right. Zach LaVine. They'll probably try to get rid of him this summer.
Yeah.
But, Chicago, they're always more than okay just going 500. They are famously a cheap organization. So, it's weird that it's smart in this regard. Where Brandon Petty told me, and I agree with him, because how could you not agree with him on this? He said that the Bulls got fleeced because they got no picks with it. Which makes complete sense because the Thunder, as we know, have all the picks in the world. Yep. So for them not to get one first-round pick to go with Josh Giddey, I think that is pretty bad. Especially since they were asking for up to 2 first-round picks, I believe, at the deadline for Alex Caruso. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a good trade player for player. But they probably should have got a first-round pick with it. But I think it'll benefit both teams.
I agree. I think that for Chicago, you clearly aren't in a win-now situation, so you got to start building towards the future. As good as Caruso is at what he does, he's not the future builder. Like in 3-4 years from now, he's not going to be the same player as he is today. So you've got a team in the Thunder that absolutely can win now. We just saw them in the second round take Dallas to 6, and that was a series where the role players were hit and miss at times. I know Jalen Williams had a couple good games. Chet was up and down offensively. Defensively, he's always going to be long, athletic. So you getting Caruso to add along with Jalen Williams, who can play defense. Shea obviously is a very good defender, plus he can do it offensively. You've got Chet, who can play defense. That team, Lou Dort, and people off the bench too. So that team's going to be even better. So I love the trade for the Thunder. For the Bulls, as you say, I like the player. Getting a pick out of it would have made the deal perfect on their end, but I don't hate it for them because they're getting youth and they're getting potential to help build the roster for the future. So I like it both sides.
I agree.
Okay. So every year I like to do lists, of course. Last year was the first one I kind of unveiled the top. I have a top 32 players in the NBA. It was me, Camden, and Kyle. The debate really came between 32 and 20 more so than it did from 1 through 20. Because I feel like the top 10 to 12 players in the league, kind of definitive of who it is for the most part. You can kind of argue some of the towards the bottom, but just the order of what it is. And then when it comes down to like that back half of like, where do you rank this player to this player? I think that's where we kind of got into a little bit of back and forth. But I do have the same thing again this year. Last year I had the tiers and names. I don't have the tiers and names. I just have a list of 32 players for people who haven't seen it before. I kind of go through a little bit of a rating scale, contributions to winning, individual greatness, injury factors can kind of factor into it for people who get perpetually injured and kind of can take away a little bit. It's not like an end all be all, but it can bring you back just a hair. Postseason success over the last couple of years, seeing what you've done in obviously the biggest moments, what we see, eye tests, and then also a little bit of like the situation that you're in and how you're playing, like how you maximize yourself in that situation. So, do you have any questions, Kyle? Anything you want to?
I'm ready to argue.
Okay. So, I'm going to go from 32 up to 1. 32, I have Bam Adebayo. 31, I have Trae Young.
Okay, keep going.
30, I have Pascal Siakam. 29, I have DeMontis Sabonis. 28, I have Paulo Banchero. 27, De'Aaron Fox. 26, Zion Williamson. Zion could be higher. He's one of those guys. I know he played 70 games this year, so this is the first year he really played like a full season. But he's one of those guys that even though we saw 40 points from him, he still got injured and missed the playoffs. Injuries and his weight, body have been a big thing. Also, stop me whenever you need to say something. But Zion's 26. He has the talent to be roughly around, I'd say, 15-ish. But
he has a talent to be top 5.
Yeah, I was going to say, he has a talent to be top 5 if he puts it together. I say, like, talent with a skill right now has the potential to be in that 15 range.
We're at 26 right now?
We're at 26 right now.
Like, you're about to say 26? Or
I'm about to say 25.
Okay, so before we go,
yeah,
I would say 32 through 27.
Yep.
Could be ordered any way you want.
Fair. I would say I would.
I don't know if I would have. I'm not sure if I would have Trae Young ahead of Bam, but I'm not mad at it.
See, like that.
And you could also tell me Bam's top 25, and I don't know who's ahead. I mean, obviously I know like the obvious suspects are ahead, but I'm not. You might convince me that Zion's too low.
You think he could be up like in the upper 20s?
I feel like he should at least be top 25, but we'll hear who 25 and above is. So
okay,
let's hear it from there.
Yeah, all right. So Zion Williamson is 26. 25 is Damian Lillard. 24 is Tyrese Halliburton. I know how you feel about Tyrese. If you wanted to switch it, I would get it.
I had no problem with Halliburton. All I said was, from mid-January on, he was not an All-NBA level player.
He was not the same Halliburton. He's not bubble Halliburton.
And I think we saw it sometimes in the playoffs, but I don't think we saw it nearly enough for the level of player he is.
Yep.
So I'm not mad at him being top 25.
Mm-hmm.
I'd actually probably, I don't know. I'm not mad at the Dame Halliburton thing, but I might have Dame ahead of him. But Dame wasn't an all NBA level player last year.
Mm-hmm.
Halliburton at least was for, let's say, 8 weeks, 10 weeks maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he did get to the conference finals. So I'm not mad at it.
23, Devin Booker.
That seems a bit low, but keep going.
It felt a bit low to me too, and I get some of the next guys within from 23 to 17. I would get if you
Devin
wanted.
Booker's got to at least be top 15 to me.
Okay. 22, Jamal Murray.
I got Booker ahead of Jamal Murray.
21, Tyrese Maxey.
I'd probably have Booker ahead of Maxey, and I love Maxey. Maxey's one of my favorite players in the league.
I guess the thing, Devin Booker put up 46 in the last game, but the first 3 games in that series, he didn't play well. The year before, him in elimination games so far in his career, little things in little spots where I feel like he's just hasn't performed up to the level. And then obviously in the regular season, he was roughly around he was fifth. He was all NBA third team this year. I honestly felt like it could have gone to either Jalen. I wouldn't have minded Wemby personally, but that's a me thing. I think how he played defensively, offensively. I think there were guys, even Paul George was roughly around that conversation, even Maxey, guys who could have slid in that spot. I would say he was around a top 20 player this year, but you'll see the list.
I'll say like this. We haven't heard Paul George's name yet. Mm-hmm. And I would have Booker ahead of Paul George.
You would have Booker ahead of Paul George?
And I don't know where Paul George slots at, but I think Book's at least got to be top 15.
Okay. Top 15, I get what if you're saying top 20. Top 15 for me, I wouldn't have him above anybody. Confidently, I wouldn't have him anyone above, honestly, probably 19, if not 18. Because a lot of these, I do agree with you. You can kind of alternate a little bit in between. But for me, I wouldn't have him there. But okay, I'll go on. So Devin Booker was 23. Jamal Murray, 22. Tyrese Maxey, 21.
I'm for sure having ahead of those two.
And then Paul George is 20. So you were just talking about Paul George. Right. So Paul George is right at 20. So Kyle would at least have him top 20.
I would have Jamal Murray. That's tough.
I just Jamal Murray has shown obviously over the last 2 postseasons. He was banged up this postseason, but big moments, big play. I get it because Devin Booker has been the second best player on a team that did get to the finals. But
he was probably their best player.
He was probably their best player, but Chris Paul was their leader. But he was probably overall just their most talented player on that roster. He played well throughout those playoffs. Chris Paul played very well throughout those playoffs too.
I would say this in comparison, right? Yep. So I would put you had Maxey ahead of Jamal.
Yeah, I'd have 23 Booker, 22 Murray, 21 Maxey. They're right in line, and then 20 Paul George.
I would say like this. I would say Jamal Murray and Paul George need to be in the same class because Paul George, his tools all together, defense, his shooting ability, his handle, just him being a good teammate.
Yep.
You can kind of put him anywhere. Mm-hmm. I think that's super valuable at any era of the league, but especially this era, right? Jamal Murray is someone who is just despite how he played this postseason, an absolute killer in the postseason.
Yeah.
His stats are legitimately better in the postseason than the regular season. Mm-hmm. So with that, whereas Paul George, it's hit or miss. You might get a great postseason for him. You might get a good one. You might get a bad one. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have as many bad ones as, you might hear from fans. He's a pretty good postseason player.
Really what happened with him was
the whole playoff.
The playoff play he won because it was him and Westbrook and the Thunder and then the Gatorade commercial. And then that playoffs, he had a few bad games, including I think the elimination game. Him and Russ were terrible in the first round. But I think he did have a few. He did have a few good games, and he was close to being an MVP candidate for 3/4 of that year on the Thunder. He was really good throughout the season.
So because of that, I would have Murray and Paul George in the same boat. Wouldn't really care which way you had the other ahead.
Yep.
Say Jamal Murray's done enough to be ahead just for
fair
his level of postseason success.
That's fair.
I would have Maxey behind them both.
Mm-hmm.
Again, love Maxey. He's got to be one of my favorite players in the league.
Yeah.
And I would have Book ahead of all four of them.
So right now, by the sounds of it, you would have, if you didn't change anything back, it would be Maxey 23 for you, then probably Paul George 22, Jamal Murray 21, and as of the second, Devin Booker 20 with the chance of him sliding up higher. That sounds like
right now. I really can't imagine who would be ahead of Booker to make him not top 15, right? Mm-hmm. But also, I mean, on the other side of this, with the Paul George Maxey thing, like it's heavily rumored or heavily implied that the Sixers' top target will be Paul George.
Yeah.
In the offseason. I think in that scenario, if it's Embiid, Paul George, and Maxey, Paul George is the number 3 offensive option. So, again, it's a thing of Paul George does so much for a team with his elite defense, with his ball handling. He can create a little bit. Mm-hmm. He's a sneaky good playmaker. And Maxey, man, he's just a hooper. You can trust him to shoot the ball. You can trust him in big moments.
To pull up from 38.
You can trust him with anything.
Yeah.
I think I said this about him, and if I haven't, he's the first player since like prime Kyrie where like it doesn't matter his size, it doesn't matter what angle he's at, it doesn't matter anything. When he's around the rim, I assume it's going in.
Yeah.
With Maxey. So I love his offensive game. He's one of my favorite offensive talents in the league. So maybe he should be ahead of Paul George. I don't know. All depends what you value. So those 3 in particular, Paul George, Maxey, Murray, are just tough because Murray seems like an offensive only player. Mm-hmm. Probably a decent defensive player.
He's all right. He's nothing crazy.
You know, Paul George is still, he might be an elite player. It's hard to say if he's not the top of the top, but I think all 30 teams would want him on the squad. So
yeah, absolutely. So like that's how I was feeling when I was going through this. I was looking at all of them. Jamal Murray doesn't always have this regular season statistics, but he's kind of like Jimmy Butler, where he even takes up a level in the playoffs to where you kind of have to value that a little bit more. But like they're all around the All NBA third team kind of level, so it was really tough between all of them, which is why they're all lumped together and like right next to each other. So I don't disagree with anything you're saying. The difference between 22 and 20 in this scenario with these 3 players doesn't really affect me. I agree. But, so Paul George at 20. I've got Kyrie Irving at 19. I've got Jimmy Butler at 18.
See, I think Booker's got to be ahead of Jimmy Butler.
Would you have him ahead of Kyrie?
Yeah. Think of this series right now. I mean, I hate to play this game, but think of that last series was Luka to Devin Booker. I think Devin Booker gets his shots off against the likes of Jaylen Brown better than Kyrie.
See, I don't know, honestly.
If that's 2016 Kyrie, don't matter who you put on him. This level of Kyrie, he had a great regular season, but hey, he averaged 16 points, I think, in the Thunder series, and got absolutely locked up by the Celtics. I can't picture, would they give Book problems? Sure. But I can't picture Book averaging those 16 points against the Thunder or whatever he averaged against Boston, which I'm assuming was under or around 20.
I don't see Book. He's just some person for me that's like, I guess like in my head, like he's just like some of the bad postseason moments are just sticking out to me. But he obviously has borderline superstar level game, like with the talent that he does have, especially offensively. So, like, he can obviously hit you mid-range. When he gets cooking from 3, he's lethal. He's obviously a good 3-point shooter for sure, but great mid-range, can get to the basket, great from the free throw line. I think he shot like 93% in the playoffs from the free throw line. But Devin Booker was the one for me that was, like, kind of difficult. Like, he was averaging, like, 22, 3, and 5 roughly. Like, in elimination games, that's kind of where he was during there. He was averaging 20 points on not good efficiency against the Timberwolves throughout that series, and then obviously exploded in Game 4, so it ended up bringing his average up to 27 and 6. But he was just one that kind of really threw me off. He had a really good regular season. He was 27, 5, and 7, so like 49% shooting. So I don't hate that you have him a little bit ahead.
I would say this.
But I was just thinking, like, playoff-wise, when it comes down to it, I still like Jimmy's just such a killer. But again, obviously what you do in the regular season has to matter a little bit too. And that's where Devin Booker has outplayed Jimmy Butler for the majority of their careers.
Here's what I would say.
Yep.
So, all right, Kyrie specifically.
Yep.
Let's start there. He had absolutely no trade value around the league last year. Dallas is one of the only teams. Fuck that.
That was that was demeanor, but it also matters.
In free agency, the only team he had available to him was Dallas.
Yep.
And it would have been probably the Lakers too, but they didn't have the money.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to matter where, again, 30 teams would give up the farm for Booker, you know? I mean, outside of the ones that have, you know, Wemby or Luka, but, you know, Booker would have a humongous, he'd have an Anthony Davis type haul back for him, probably, right now. And then to Jimmy Butler's point, Miami would absolutely give up Jimmy Butler for Devin Booker.
They would for the future, absolutely. I don't know if they would for next season. If you're just telling me it's just for next season, I don't know if they would.
They absolutely would. I think Pat Riley in a second. I mean, they love what Jimmy Butler's done, but I mean, he didn't even play 60 games for him.
So if it doesn't say injury wise, then I can hear you with the injuries thing, but so I can hear.
And let's be real. I mean, Booker, yeah, he's had some tough moments in the playoffs, but it ain't like he's.
Oh no, he's not a choke artist or anything like that.
Right?
Absolutely not.
So I mean, I don't know. To have Kyrie, I could not put Kyrie ahead of him, and Jimmy Butler, sure. Especially if we were doing this maybe after. I don't know what your list was last year with Jimmy and Booker, where they both ended up, but
they were both higher last year. Jimmy was in like the top 14, and Booker was in like the top 19. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but they were around there. But
those are two players for sure I would have Booker ahead of. But keep going. I'm very interested because
so you would have right now the really one thing that's sticking out to you is Booker, which is fair. I understand. So 17's Jaylen Brown.
Okay.
Would you have Booker, Jaylen Brown?
I would have them in the same vicinity.
Same vicinity. So you would have, and then this is where I don't think I would take anybody over one player maybe, and it has to do with injury, but otherwise there's not a player in this top 16 that I would take Booker over. Victor Wembanyama 16. I'm taking Wemby over Devin Booker. So I have him at 16. It was hard for me to have him. Like, for him, I think he has to just do a little more. But, like, I mean...
Wemby's not... All right, keep going. Keep going.
So, 15's Kawhi. He was the hardest person for me to put on this list because it's like he can be 7.
When healthy, he's
5.
Possibly top 5.
And then, like... He's just not healthy enough. But, like, but this year he was even all... NBA second team, so it was like he was good enough to be there.
I think that's a perfect ranking for him because we just don't see him enough. And actually, we saw him the most we ever had this regular season, and
still
we didn't
missed
see him in the postseason.
I mean, it's the same kind of thing with Zion, where Zion really could be in the Kawhi Leonard spot at 15, but because when I was going through this, I was like, obviously Wemby has like a higher potential than Zion, but like both of them just have a lot of just God-given natural physical athleticism and ability. It's like you almost want to kind of have them in the same-ish like line for like the athleticism. Obviously Wemby's an alien, but then it was like Zion just gets so injured so often and like he hasn't really played all that, and so
give me 14 through 11. I don't know.
But yeah, 14's John Morant. I think that he could even be a little John Morant, when healthy, I mean, this is really the first injury in the regular season that he stepped for that put him back for a lot of time.
So I'd say this.
Yeah.
Let me cut you off.
Yeah, you go.
I would say just because of Ja's injury and just how we did not see him this season, I think by default I would have to have, and this is not me just trying to get Devin Booker, but that would be my Booker replacement right there. I'd slide Ja back a little bit. I'd put Booker in the top 15 for that reason. Just because, again, we haven't seen Ja Morant. And I think the Grizzlies are going to be back in the playoffs, and I think Ja Morant's a top 15 player. I do. But I think for this year, just coming off of the 2024 season, I don't think there's any way we could say Ja Morant's better than Devin Booker because one was available.
And one wasn't. The thing with me when I was weighing the options, it was like Ja Morant's absolutely top 15. And then I was thinking to myself, too, I was like, he was injured this year. He missed a bunch of time, and then obviously he had the suspension that he was dealing with too. But I was like, Also thinking that this is really like the first major injury from him. He's been available for his career. Like obviously led them to the playoffs multiple times. So that's why I didn't penalize him too much for it. But I can't say I adamantly disagree with what you're saying. Well, one was we saw all season long and in the playoffs made an All-NBA team, third team, and then one was not available for the season. So I can't really hate it, but like that's just where my John Morant thought was.
One thing about Devin Booker, I mean, I said his rookie year to you and some friends that in 5 years he was going to be the best 2 guard in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people who were around at that time who were to talk to me about Devin Booker, maybe they mistook that for like he's one of my favorite players in the league, which he was at that time. At 19, he was. Mm-hmm. Now he's really not. I kind of get annoyed with Book. I feel like he can be a little bit of a bitch on the court at times.
Yeah.
Got some light-skinned tendencies on the court at times. But overall, I like Book. So that being said, so when I'm talking about Devin Booker here, it ain't like, we're talking Ja. I love Ja as a player more than Devin Booker.
Yeah, he's on your top 10 most exciting list. So.
He is. But I think one thing you can't take away from Booker is he's insanely consistent. His playmaking's got a lot better. He was essentially the point guard for their team this year.
Hated it, but he did as well as you can. And
whenever he wants, he can give you 30. And I think he very much reminds me of Jason Tatum with how polished they were coming into the league, scoring. And I like Booker's shot selection a little more than Tatum. I know Tatum just obviously most recently a champion, but I really don't think those two are far off from each other. Booker also plays defense. Tatum's a better defender for sure, but I think Booker is.
He tries, and he's actually effective.
He's not a minus. He's
an effective defender,
and he's a playmaker. And again, he's just one of those guys who can get you 30 at any point. But keep going.
Yep. So
that would be my main.
That would be
though.
so.
If Booker's at 14, I'm much more happy with that than. Where's he at? He's at 21.
23.
Man, say he's not top 20. That's insane.
So Devin Booker's the one, and that's 13, Donovan Mitchell.
It's fair. See, that's exactly. I think those two are right there. Those two are right there. I think that's perfect for him. So that would be my main qualm, along with someone else that you've named. But we'll get. Where are we at right now?
Oh, you're thinking. No, yeah, I know who you're talking about. We're at 13.
All right, we'll get to 11 before I really.
12, Jalen Brunson.
Okay.
And 11, I want to talk about this. We were talking earlier on about this player specifically, and I had him much higher, but then after thoughts, you had talked to me about this, and then after thoughts about this player, I realized that you were right in your thoughts. I have Anthony Davis at 11, but you were right in your thoughts because he was playing at that level of around a top 5 guy, but then it was like, when I looked back at it, it was like... With him, obviously he's a big, so he kind of needs to be more. He needs to be kind of fed more. He's not a guy who's just going to completely orchestrate the offense. And with him, he can have his passive games. Obviously, defensively, he's amazing. And then just offensively, he played great throughout the season and great in the playoffs. So people who feel like he's not in the top 10, cool. But for me, I actually had him on the outside because he's more of. With his secondary and complementary superstar stature, I still felt like I have 10. I'm just going to say 10 is LeBron. I still feel like LeBron is a hair better than him.
Can you give me 15 through 11 again?
Yep, absolutely. So 15 is Kawhi Leonard. 14 is John Morant. 13 is Donovan Mitchell. 12 is Jalen Brunson. 11 is Anthony Davis. And then 10 is LeBron because I just said his name.
I think if there was a way for me to flip this, it would be, and let's assume I got Booker at 14, right? There's no John Morant there, so I'd have Book at 14.
Mm-hmm.
I would have, let's say Kawhi at 13, 12.
Okay.
Let's say Kawhi and Anthony Davis are somewhere together at 13 and 12.
Yeah.
Let's put Donovan Mitchell.
About 15-ish.
About 15.
Then
then Jalen Brunson, I might have him in the top 10, depending on who you got ahead of him.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, Wemby's got to be in the top 15. So I might even put Wemby up to 15 and drop Donovan Mitchell down to 16.
Or Ja.
I'm putting Ja in the 23, like back where you got Booker.
Oh, you're putting, okay,
That's where
so you're flipping him and like
just for the season. Again, I think
I
think when we do this list next June,
mm-hmm.
I think Ja Morant will be somewhere in that top 15.
Okay. I don't hate that.
That's the only reason I would have Ja flip with Booker.
Yep.
And again, I would for sure have Booker at least in the top 20 on your list.
Yep.
Now, but I don't to say Wemby is less than 15. I do not think there's 15 players better than Wemby, and it's tough for me to put 12 players better than Wemby.
So
I think Anthony Davis, with the health he had this year, deserved it because he played insane. Mm-hmm. He's one of the best defensive players in the league.
Yep.
But I think Wemby, full stop, I've said this many times, is the best defensive player in the league. Mm-hmm. So however you want to rate that, I think that's worthy of being... There's no reason he can't be top 10. I'll say that. There's no reason.
It was hard for me not to have like just
because I hate playing this game, but put Wemby on the Knicks right now. Like just flip Brunson for Wemby. Put whatever point guard you want. Who's their backup right now?
I can't even remember.
It ended up being
because
what's that boy's name? Deuce.
Yes.
Why am I blanking?
McBride?
McBride, yes.
McBride.
So McBride ended up being their backup point, but I feel like there was someone else. Sound like a casual right now, but whatever. But you put, average point guard and put Wemby on the Knicks. Mm-hmm. Who's to say that's not a conference finalist?
So with Ja being back, he would be sneaking into the top 15 because I do get the Ja Morant. Ja Morant was difficult for me. Kawhi was difficult for me just because of kind of how the season did go for them. But Wemby, I have him right at 16. I get what you're saying, though.
So now I want to say this because we're edging towards the top 10.
Yep.
You've done your top 32.
Yep.
The player we debated the most last year along with Camden was Karl-Anthony Towns, and he didn't even make your top 32.
So after this season, I think that Bam got better this season. I think that players, you had different players like Tyrese Maxey wasn't on the list last year. Tyrese Halliburton was right at like 30 last year, 31 last year. You have players like Victor Wembanyama who wasn't even in the league last year.
Because I think he at least has to be in the top 32, Karl-Anthony Towns.
So go back to him. Would you have him over Bam?
Not over him.
Would you have him over Trae Young?
Maybe.
That was Trae Young was the guy who Trae Young, Bam. It was kind of hard because Trae Young was still at 25.5 and 10 this season. And then, but at the same time, obviously, some of it was a little bit of empty calories because obviously he wasn't on a team that was great, but at the same time, he was still producing at a high level.
I think they're both top 32.
Sabonis.
Honestly, really, it would almost be Ja for me just because of how little he played. It seemed like he played 2 weeks of basketball. Mm-hmm. So I can't say there's 32 better players than Towns.
So Karl-Anthony Towns was 33. So he was literally the next guy off. I think. So would you take Siakam off? Would you take Ja off? Would that be the guy?
He would be the guy right now because I can't take Siakam deserves to be there. Sabonis deserves to be there.
Banchero. I think Paulo deserves to be there.
Yeah. He's a tough one too. And he's definitely a dude. Like, he's definitely, like, put him anywhere he can play.
37 in Game 7 this year. He was, obviously, he was the leader of that Magic team that got to the 5th seed.
Yeah, he deserves to be top 32.
And then after that, there's no one that I think you could either, like, De'Aaron Fox has to be, Zion, of course, Damian Lillard, Tyrese, and then from the top, obviously, those guys are. So that's where it was like with Karl-Anthony Towns, I wanted him there, but I just felt like these guys had proven more. Like, Paulo was another one who kind of jumped up too. So, like,
this might be sacrilege, and he's one of my favorite players of all time.
Yeah.
But Towns himself, if he was he would have a case for Damian Lillard. He would have a case for it. He was inconsistent this year. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying I believe that or disbelieve that, but I think out of all those players you named, I thought Siakam was incredibly consistent on the Pacers.
Yes.
Lillard was inconsistent. Now, he showed up in the playoffs, of course, before he got injured. Mm-hmm. And it's still Dame. But, I thought this was Towns' best season, especially offensively. His rebounding went down.
Yes.
But, you got Gobert there. I thought he grew up quite a bit. And, you had him near the 20s last year.
I had him like 25 or 6 last year.
Where we had Bam and Sabonis was in that cluster.
Mm-hmm.
I like Bam the best out of those three still, out of Sabonis, Towns, and Bam. I might have Towns ahead of Sabonis, whereas last year I did not. But again, Sabonis basically gave you like Jokic light numbers. Like he's an elite rebounder. He's their main playmaker before Fox, so it's tough. But he gets all his points like from Fox, like off a pick and roll.
Pick and roll. He
can't create his own shot like Towns. But then again, Bam can't either. But Bam gives you elite defense. So, somewhere in there, Towns got to be in the top 32. That'd be my only change.
So that was
maybe take Trey out too. Trey missed a lot of time.
Trey was.
I'm okay with Trey going back to 33, actually.
I was going to say Trey was a guy, him and Bam, I could have switched that. And then Trey being back at 33 for Towns, I could have switched that too. But Towns was 33. Towns was in it, and then kind of the more I looked into it, he kind of phased his way out of it. But he's literally 33. So he is right there. It's not like he was... Because I had to do kind of down to a 40-ish to kind of make sure that, because Gobert was right there, Drew Holiday, Derek White are two players that absolutely kind of their roles and how they play were roughly around that range as well. So
I want to say this about Trae Young just because I happened to come across one of these Stan tweets earlier.
Yep.
And they were like, don't forget about Trae Young. He made a conference finals. I have my own feelings about that. But then the next line was, he's made it to the playoffs X amount of times.
Yep.
Right? Probably, 3 times? He's been in the league 5 years, right?
He made it.
Something like that.
He lost to the Celtics in 6 a few years back. He made it to the conference finals. And then I think, actually, the last 2 years, he's been knocked out in the last play-in game. So I want to say only twice, because I don't think it was a rookie year.
They were remember, he's been to the playoffs. He's led his team to the playoffs without an all-star. Or an all-NBA player. That don't matter. He's the point guard of the team. You're supposed to make your team better. It does not matter if you... It does to some degree. Of course, when you're playing for a championship, you would one other all-star at the least with you. And then maybe an all-NBA level player. If that happens. But you also got to remember, the all-star game's held in February, not the full year, right? So there's a lot of snubs. There's only 24 players who make it. There's
DeJounte Murray's been an all-star before.
Right. Is that true?
Yes. DeJounte Murray made the all-star game 2 years ago. I think it's when Steph won MVP, DeJounte Murray was in that all-star game. So DeJounte Murray has been an all-star before.
Yeah, I don't know. There's 2 things with this, because I saw another tweet that was about Jalen and Jason and how the media, instead of the story being them finally overcoming and finally winning their championship, that it's about, hey, who's 1, who's 2 here, which is incredibly true, because it's absolutely true. 15 years ago, the story would have been, hey, the Celtics overcame, right? They made it to the mountaintop. They're there. Now it's next. And instead, maybe it's because it was a boring finals and maybe not the best playoffs, but this who's number 1, who's number 2, that don't matter. And just not having an all-star, it matters in the terms of talent, but we all know Trae Young's had talented teammates. Just because they didn't happen to be all-stars, that's not necessarily holding Trae Young back. Trae Young's the point guard. He's supposed to make players better. He's supposed to make those around him better. So I just hate that line of thinking. But keep going.
I agree. I don't like that line of thinking either, because the Celtics had one other all-star in Jaylen Brown and then Jason Tatum. And so, obviously, but they still had someone like Derek White. Drew Holiday has been an all-star before. Kristaps has been an all-star before, so they're all-star caliber players. But, it's when you have a team effort, that's what's going to matter. And so I do agree with that. But, so the biggest points of contention thus far have been Karl Anthony Towns, you feel has to be on this list. I think he could be reworked into the 30-ish range where kind of around where he was-ish last year. Trae Young could come off. I wouldn't hate it. Devin Booker being up higher, I could definitely have him up higher. I don't know if I'd have him as high as you still, but I do understand what you're saying. And then Wemby, you would have a little bit higher, and I understand it. I just don't right now. I think when next year ends, he might be like, he could be crazy.
I think when it comes to Booker and Mitchell, they're virtually the same player, but Booker gives you better defense and probably a better playmaker.
I think I would have Mitchell because I trust him in big games and I trust him in playoff and big moments more.
I think they're equally big game players.
Donovan
Mitchell's been an explosive. You're right. Donovan Mitchell's an explosive playoff performer, but I mean, you can't.
Not that Book can't give you something. I'm not trying to make it sound
right. You can't tell me if you put Book on Cleveland that they wouldn't be basically the same amount of success, like him next to Garland. So I don't think there's really much of a drop off between those two players. Mm-hmm. And Booker played more than Mitchell this year. Mitchell was injured. Obviously, he delivered in the playoffs. He got injured versus Boston. Obviously, wasn't able to finish that series. So I would still have him one ahead of Mitchell. I think those two are neck and neck. And then, of course, like I said, I got somewhere Wemby's going to be in the top 15. There is not 15 better players in the league than him to me. But you said LeBron's 10. So let's hear 9 through 5 at least. Or 9 through 6.
LeBron is 10. Kevin Durant is 9. Steph Curry is 8. Anthony Edwards is 7. Jason Tatum is 6.
Now, I would say, because I've thought of this,
this was really hard.
Tatum at least has to be top 5.
So 5 is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
I think you can flip those.
And this is really where it became difficult for me.
I think the top 4, whoever it is, you're going to have it. But I think you got to at least flip SGA with Tatum. And I'll say this. I love what Tatum gets late in game. I love what SGA gets late in games versus Tatum. I think SGA can get any shot he wants at any time, much like a Kawhi Leonard, much like a Devin Booker. I don't think they struggle for shots at all at any point in the game, especially late in the game. And I think Jason Tatum, all too many times, what would be my main nitpick with him out of anything is his shot selection.
Yes.
Especially with his three-pointers. And he did better even in the late playoff series against Indiana and, of course, against the Mavs. I thought he attacked the rim better.
I agree.
But that would be my main qualm with him. But I think he wins a ring. He's an elite two-way player. You got to at least sub him out for SGA. I know SGA was higher in the MVP rankings than him, but championship overtakes that. So I think SGA falls out. I'm fine with Tatum at 5, SGA at 6, and then whoever your top 4 is in whatever order.
Yeah. I don't hate it at all. Obviously, if you're 5 and you're 6, I don't think there's much of a difference between those two players. So I don't hate it at all. A little thing that... Go on.
I would just say, and you could put Jalen in... Because you had Jalen at, 17?
I had him at 17, yeah.
I think you could put Jalen feasibly in where I would have Booker, in the Booker, Mitchell, Brown. I think he would be in that range. He's not an explosive offensive player like them, but two-way, what he gives you, much like what Paul George and Kawhi to a higher level back in the day. So I don't think Jalen's that far behind Jason. Now, I got Jason Tatum top 5, but it's more what he does altogether.
And here's the thing. This is going to kind of sound
but
a little crazy.
But I don't think Jalen's top 10 either.
I think the difference between 7 and 17 isn't actually that crazy of players, but, like, the numbers have to be there.
Yeah,
but I don't think, because Jaylen Brown's 17 and 7's Anthony Edwards. I don't think Anthony Edwards is far and away just, walk ahead of way better than Jaylen Brown. I do think he's better, but, players like Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, Ja Morant, Kawhi, it's hard to kind of rank.
Let me say this then.
Those. Yep. I feel like the top 10 could be 17 players. So that's the thing.
If you're Jaylen Brown,
yep.
Just the way I was looking at it, who did I say it was before Towns? I forget, but whatever. If you're Jaylen Brown though, he would look at it and say, "Why can't I be a Kawhi? Why couldn't I be a Kawhi's 15 spot?" Kawhi didn't show up in the postseason. And
that's fair enough.
So I think Jalen's got a real case for 15, and I think Jalen would also say, if I'm Jaylen Brown, I think he would also say, okay, why can't I be in the Donovan Mitchell spot? Donovan Mitchell, I don't think Donovan Mitchell's been to the conference finals.
No.
And I saw a stat today, actually, conveniently.
That's really odd. But go on.
Jaylen Brown has played in 74 playoff games, and it's ahead of like several NBA franchises. Like he alone's played in more playoff games than several franchises. So, and I really do think I'm kind of almost basing it off. I think he had a great postseason.
Yeah,
all around great postseason. But I think he's about to take off, and I do think I don't even want to make this about that because I know I brought this up, but I do think he's going to close that gap even more between him and Jason because I don't think there's much of a gap. I think they're right there. And I think they can each be the best player for the Celtics on a given night. And I think that's what Ainge wanted, and I think that's what Brad Stevens wants, and that's why he hasn't broke them up. So I don't think the gap's that far.
I think it could become a lesser version of Durant and Steph in the sense of like Durant could really be the best player one night, Steph can't, but they're not at those. They're both not at the peak.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying a lesser version. Like if you take it down, like where their stature is, like best player on that. But
I mean, that's a little different. Well, that's a
well, yeah, because those can be the best.
They were so complete. They're such complete offensive players. I just think, and I think I said it better a couple of weeks ago. I think Jason's been the best player his entire career because he came in so polished, and Jalen was the raw product.
Yes,
and now he's just at the point where he's caught up to Jason.
He's starting. Yeah, it was good. Jalen Brown was in that 17 spot. He kind of. We like not in like the exact same play style way, but kind of like Jamal Murray was last year, and how like Jamal Murray went on that huge playoff run last year, was playing phenomenal, especially against the Lakers, and obviously played really well in the finals too. And he showed that he's just like he obviously on any given night we've seen Jamal Murray go off for 50 in a playoff game. We've seen him compete with your best guard and everything like that. So like he was Jalen Brown kind of ascended to that because like. The tune with Jalen Brown 2 years ago when we did the podcast when he was barely using his left, and then last year even like how like his turnovers and everything, he's cleaned that up, he's matured. So kudos to Jalen Brown, absolutely. And
I'll say this too because I use this example.
Yep.
Because it's a hot topic right now that Jimmy might be traded from the Miami Heat. All right, so and I gave the example of if Booker was available, they'd make that trade in a heartbeat. I think. Let's say they were trading for either Donovan Mitchell or Jalen Brown. I think it would be the same package. Like I think they would be around the same value. So I think
I could see them being.
I think Jalen himself would say, "Hey, why wouldn't I be in the Donovan Mitchell class? Yeah, I'm a number 2 technically. Like I'm viewed as a number 2, but hey, I defend at a high level. I can get my shots at a high level, and he's a 25 a game guy. Let's be real." And he's a Finals MVP.
Yeah, he kind of is at his level because Ja and Kawhi are the two ahead of him. So you honestly like the way that it was like 17 and 13 is where they are. It's Wemby, Leonard, and Morant on this list in between them. So they're in the same ballpark for sure. I wouldn't say that like oh my gosh Jalen Brown is like 2 levels down from Donovan Mitchell. No, they're right at about the same thing. So
and honestly, let's be real. We could put Kawhi at 20. Kawhi's missed enough postseasons now to where we could just say, all right,
again, the hardest guy, the single hardest guy for me to put a spot.
So I wouldn't be mad at putting Kawhi at 20 and moving all those guys, Booker, Mitchell, Jalen, because all of them are very deserving of top 15. Not that Kawhi's not. Kawhi was all NBA second team, like you said, but. It's been this every year in the postseason since he's been a Clipper, minus the bubble season. So
no, the Kawhi Leonard is the single toughest guy because when he plays, he's top 10. It's when he plays that makes it so difficult, and it's so often, which is why I had him at 15. But again, I'm really not mad at having him at 20. Like it wouldn't bother me at all. But we were talking about Tatum and Shea switching. I had Shea. This isn't the only barometer to have, but the kind of funny thing with Shea, Jason, and Anthony Edwards is they all happened to play the Mavericks in the playoffs. And Shea, by far, was the best player against like that team. So you had the same exact defense when they're on the same exact run. Not that that's the only reason why someone's better because it's one series. It's not the end-all, be-all. But that's kind of where I led to, because then I was thinking to myself, if Shea was switched with Jason Tatum, do I think they win a championship too? Not that it's just that easy, but I absolutely think they win a championship this year. You can say the same thing about it. I absolutely think they win a championship this year.
Depends. If everyone's fully healthy, not necessarily.
I think if you put Shea with the exact path that Jason Tatum had this season, I think if you put Shea on that team, I don't really see much of a difference between their season.
You're probably right.
But I mean, again, that's so hypothetical and it's so difficult to say. And you having Tatum at 5 is not a problem.
I think he's earned his keep to be 5.
That's fair.
He's been in that 8 to 5 place. But like if we're solidifying top 5, I think. You said it. They both played the same team. 1-1.
One did not win, and
the Thunder were favored.
Even though Boston does have the better team, we feel the Thunder were more than adequately equipped to win that series. So it's not like I had the Mavericks winning that series, but it wouldn't have shocked me if the Thunder did win that series. And as you said, they were favored. So I don't hate the switch between those 5. I then have Embiid at 4. I know that in the past, Embiid's playoff success and his injuries, that is really tough for me with how that. But then also I saw him play injured this season and still drop 50 in a playoff game. And it was one of those things where he hasn't gotten to a conference finals yet, but he also is an MVP. When he is healthy, and especially when he was healthy this year, he showed to be like almost the most dominant player in the league. He was averaging like 35 a game. But then again, the same thing when you talk Kawhi, the same thing when you talk Zion, the amount of injuries that they are. He was, again, a harder player for me to put, but like just the talent and the level of play is so high when he's on the court. I have him at 4. If you wanted to even put him at 7 and put Shea, Jason, and Anthony Edwards ahead of him, I couldn't be mad because of the health.
I'm okay with Embiid dropping out of the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
Just because.
So you would say put Jason Tatum 4, Shea 5, keep Embiid at 6, possibly between him and Ant-Mont, maybe something like that.
You could give me either one of. If we move Tatum up to 4, you could give me either one of Embiid or SGA at 5.
Yep.
I think Embiid has more of a case to fall out of the top 5 than SGA. Honestly,
I would agree with that.
But like you said, Embiid, he dropped 70 this year. He has a higher ceiling than both of those players, than SGA and Tatum. That we've seen. Mm-hmm. We've seen what.
Oh, his ceiling's the best player in the league. That's truly what his ceiling is.
Could be. He's the best, at least regular season player.
Yeah. I mean, we have to see in the playoffs. So, like his ceiling is the best player in the league to me, but
he's complicated because he really is unlucky. And honestly, where Zion is at his career right now, like just constantly getting injured, that's what we thought Embiid was going to be. Mm-hmm. And your retort could be, he still does get injured every year. We thought we weren't going to see him much like Zion. He basically missed the first 2 seasons of his career.
Yep.
So, Embiid's more available than not, even though it doesn't seem like it. Even though he seems to get hurt at the very worst times, it happens to be the playoffs, much like Blake Griffin used to. And Kawhi these last 4 years. So, yeah, you're probably right. Embiid's got to be top 5. SGA, where he's hard, and this is not his fault at all, but where he's hard to evaluate is he's got such a good team around him. They all fit him so well, which is not his fault. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like, all right, are they good because of the whole? Because he's the closer, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
He gets the most shots, but are they good because of the whole team and more so because of him? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like he's more so the closer on that team. But I don't know. That's the thing about
does the team benefit him as much as he benefits the team kind of thing? Or
like if we switch him with Kawhi, if he's still on the Clippers, let's say it's him, Paul George, and Russ and Harden and them, how much does it change? Do they still lose to Luka?
I don't know. He lost to Luka. And he lost to Luka with his Thunder team, so maybe, but I don't know.
And no SGA here. I love SGA. He's got.
I don't think I think people kind of get confused when you're talking hate. You're saying that he's at worst the top 6 player in the league. I truly don't think that's hating. But like other people are like, it's top 6 in the league. He's not hating on SGA.
I think Tatum's gonna be top 5, and I think he's at least. And Celtics fans would absolutely say he has to be ahead of Embiid because of how many times he's beat him personally in the playoffs.
And see, though,
the toughest part with that is because Embiid can just outright look phenomenal. Outside of the flopping, outside of the foul baiting, he can look phenomenal at his best as a 2-way player.
Yep.
So His ceiling's higher than Tatum. I would have Tatum somewhere in that 4 or 5 range. I'm not mad at Embiid still being in the top 5. Whether he's ahead of Embiid or not, that's a legitimate debate because of how much better in the postseason Tatum is than him.
Yeah.
But Embiid is such a better all-around player than him. He's an elite defender. He's an elite offensive player. We know that. All right,
there's 0 holes in this game. But Luka 3, Giannis 2, Jokic 1. That's just how it goes. If you wanted to switch Luka and Giannis, that's whatever. I wouldn't. But I think that Giannis has become slightly valued and underrated. Like, I was looking at his numbers this year, and Giannis put up a smooth, cool 30, 11.5, 6.5, 1 steal, 1 block on 61% shooting from the floor. He was like second in, like he was like third in win shares this year. His box plus minus, he was top 4. His win over replacement, like value over replacement player was like top 6. That's in your advanced numbers. PER top 3. So I think he's come, even though he's still at 2, and I think people universally recognize him as a top 3 player in the league, I think he's almost become a touch undervalued in how amazing of a player he is. He's also been a guy the last 2 years, though, who's bit the injury bug. He didn't play at all in these playoffs last year. He obviously missed the beginning and middle-ish of the series against the Heat last year. So that's another thing that you kind of factor in a little bit. But I have him at 2. I think that Luka has a little bit of growing to do. And this, I had him at 2 before. I still had Luka going into the finals. I had Luka at 3. The finals may have changed that a little bit, but I had Luka at 3 going into the finals. So like the finals really didn't like change a lot for me with Luka, but Jokic is 1, and that's just that.
Yeah, I mean, couple things. I mean, heard a podcast with Doc Rivers, and if y'all want to say Kyle's got his cape on for Doc, I'm gonna go ahead and say it, but he made a good point talking about. And I made this point when he got hired anyway, saying that, like, you can't expect him to just, like, take off with the team because you're taking over a championship expectation type team in the middle of the year, who was in first place, I believe, at the time. Like, it was a weird situation.
Yeah, they were 30-13. I mean, they were so good that Doc Rivers was the All-Star game coach. Because of the fact that they chose the Bucks coach.
Before the break.
So he was the All-Star game coach, and he coached like 5 games. So they were that good enough to where he could be the All-Star game coach.
So where I will shoot Doc's unveiled is he said, hey, I didn't even have my coaching staff. I had a mixture of Adrian Dantley's coaching staff. Adrian Griffin's coaching staff. Yeah. And I think he said there was still some of Bud's coaching staff. He said there was a mix of 2 somehow. I didn't really understand that. But that's true. When you're a head coach, much like in the NFL, you pick your coaching staff. So he didn't have his coaching staff.
Yep.
And then he said, and I didn't even know this, but remember, Dame was traded right before training camp.
Yep.
He said Dame had told him that he was in the worst shape of his life this season. And that's why he was so inconsistent. And then he said on this podcast that Dame has been in the gym since they got eliminated and is already in game shape. So that, along with what you said about Giannis, I am very, very, very intrigued on what the Bucks look like because, man, I was thinking the other day, like, it's weird how much Giannis gets hate because he's like a textbook exciting player. Like, you got a dude who's, before Wemby showed up, we all thought this dude was an alien. And he can literally,
the Greek freak is what he's called for a reason.
He can literally, and I think it should be like, he should have his nickname, since he's a champion, should have been upgraded to the Greek God. That's an even better nickname.
Yeah.
I don't know why that didn't catch on, but that's another day. Another story for another day. But, I mean, he is a textbook exciting player, and there's a lot of people out there who just do not like him for whatever reason, which is crazy because he's insanely fun to watch. And, man, he's still, I mean, you just read off his stats. You've got him at the number 2 player in the league. He still could, like, add so much more to his game, and that's incredibly scary.
And that's why his ceiling's like top, almost borderline top 5 of all time. Like, so that's what his ceiling is.
If you're telling me, and by the way, while we're on the topic of Dame, I think he's. How far did you have Kyrie ahead of him? Because I'd have them almost grouped together.
6 spots.
Okay, I'd have them like almost grouped together. The same way I'd have Booker and Mitchell grouped together.
So. Yeah, I had Kyrie I was gonna say Kyrie 19 and then Dame 25, but I honestly have like kind of almost that whole group kind of group together.
Because
so like if I was to group it, I think I would have a lot of these guys that were talking back and forth in the same group. I just have them in different orders. I don't think it was like it's hard when you're in a list. But like
because you almost have to tier them. Because
I think when I put the picture up like for it, when I make the graphic, I will tier them, and you'll kind of see what my thought process was, because they are really a tier. Because I do think that like Dame and Kyrie are pretty much close to the same tier. So
because look at what Dame looked like before he got injured. Mm-hmm. He was looking like real life Dame.
Yep.
But to bring it back, man, if Dame's like, if we get 2022 Dame next year with a healthy Giannis, which Giannis was healthy.
That's why they were in the finals for me
up until the last week.
They were in the finals for preseason wise. So they're in my finals this year.
If we get that, that's scary, and I would assume they'll have a better bench. But I have no qualms about that. We didn't even mention Jokic because it's so unanimous. I mean, Jokic is, to me, I think he proved how far and away best player in the league he is. At least between him and Luka. Maybe not him and Giannis. And I still think there is a gap between him and Giannis. But, man, Jokic he's the best player in the league right now.
He obviously was number one in win shares, number one in box plus minus, number two in PER, or number one in PER because Embiid didn't play enough games. And then value over replacement player. So literally anything analytical when your second level stats, Jokic is going to be one. He averaged 26, 12, and 9 in the regular season, and he just plainly upticked that to 29, 13, and 9 in the postseason.
He's incredible.
So
he's incredible.
Like I just a little fun fact for that. But that's the list. Not as much argument as I really thought. Just a couple players could have definitely moved around.
My argument's more in the middle of the list rather than the top. The top actually ends up being pretty easy, like you said. Once you get to the top 10,
once you get to the top 10, I think it's pretty much like you can debate the spot a little bit. Again, Jason Tatum, having him at 6, you said you could have him up to 4. You want to have him in that top 5 for sure. But like the difference between 4 and 6. The difference between 4 and 6 is not as big as 4 and 5, just because, he's a top 5 player in the league. Just like it's a little, you know what I mean? Just that phrase kind of changes things. But that was good. One thing I wanted to say before, unless you have anything else, and then we can maybe do whatever because we've been going on for a second. But Bleacher Report put up a top 20 playoff performers of all time list.
Okay.
Thought it was interesting. I'm gonna read it. Do you want me to read from top to bottom or bottom to top?
21.
All right. 20 was D Wade. 19 Isaiah Thomas. 18 Giannis.
Pistons?
Yeah.
Right.
18 Giannis. 17 Kawhi.
Okay.
16 Dirk.
Okay.
15 KD. 14 Jokic.
Dirk's got to be ahead of KD, but all right.
14 Jokic. 13 Hakeem.
You could make a case Jokic's top 10 easy, but keep going.
12 Jerry West, 11 Wilt Chamberlain, 10 Kobe Bryant.
Jokic added Wilt for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Wilt's gonna fall back a little bit. I'm okay with Jerry West being where he's at.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have probably Giannis ahead of Wilt. Keep going.
Kobe 10, Steph Curry 9, Bill Russell 8, Tim Duncan 7.
Wait. Bill Russell and Tim Duncan didn't even crack the top 5.
Kareem 6.
Okay.
Larry 5.
Okay.
Magic 4. Shaq 3.
Okay. I was waiting for that name. Okay.
LeBron 2. Mike 1.
Not a bad list. Not a terrible
Not mad.
list.
Mike 1, LeBron 2. Perfectly fine with that. I would absolutely agree. Like, I know obviously LeBron has to be, to me, top 2 for me. And then, of course, like Shaq 3, it's...
I know people hate this. I don't want to cut you off.
No, you're good.
Bill Russell's got to be... You win 11 rings. I don't care if there's...
I think I might...
He's at least got to be top 5.
I think you have to put him over Bird. I think
Where's
Bird's
Bird at?
5. Bird's 5.
And who's the other? It's Magic.
Magic, Shaq, LeBron, Mike. So I think Shaq deserves to be there. But Shaq is hard for me because... His dominance was so, like his peak dominance
is top 3.
Yeah, no, his peak may be top 1. To be quite honest with you, like his peak, like that 3-peat, like the dominance he had is like truly close to unmatched. Like, Mike has obviously had those peaks in his three-peat. LeBron has reached those levels, but the amount, 36-15 over 3 straight NBA finals is insane. So, like,
I've been thinking about a lot of bullshit lately that pertains to sports that don't matter.
I just want to quickly say, though, right before,
Go
Steph
ahead.
Curry over Kobe Bryant, absolutely agree. So all the Kobe haters that probably see that and hate it, but absolutely.
Well, all right, so that's
Absolutely.
exactly who I was about to talk about was
Absolutely.
Kobe Bean, because I've said a lot that if you take the year 2000, right, their first title run,
Yep.
if you replace Kobe with, let's say, Vince Carter or Allen Iverson, still think they win the ring.
Yep.
2001 and 2002, that's where you can't replace Kobe.
Oh, yeah, I think that.
So, the people who say, oh, Shaq carried Kobe, that's not the case.
No.
But 2000 version of Shaq, that's like the best version of Shaq we ever got. 2001, 2002, he was still dominant, but 2000, like, who the hell's guarding Shaq across that era?
No one's guarding
right?
Shaq.
So that Shaq with, again, if you replace him with Vince or AI, I think they still win. 21 or 2001, 2002. Yeah, Kobe was more than validated. Steph over Kobe, I don't know if I could have that, honestly.
Oh,
actually.
I've gone through it. I'm trying to find where I have all the information. Absolutely.
My whole thing with Steph and KD is they're extremely hard for me to evaluate with their careers just because of that 2017 season, that 2018 season. 2019, obviously, they didn't three-peat. So that one's a little more, it's a little different, but.
No, God, I can't find it right now. But no, I have Steph over Kobe. I have Steph over Kobe as a playoff performer.
And that's okay, but I think it's got to be like a 9-8 situation.
Well, they're 9-10. They're 9-10, so like they're right there.
I think that's fair. fair.
I do too. I'm just saying that, like, I know a lot of Kobe haters. I mean, a lot of Kobe, like, stans who think he's top 3 all time, which gets me every time.
Maybe, but look, Kobe had some monster games in 2001, in 2002, in 2003, 2004, that whole era, even 06, 2007. But in that 2009 championship run, had some big games that you forget about. Forget about them.
In the finals, Steph averaged. Kobe's played 37 finals games. Steph's played 34. Steph does average more points, rebounds, assists, about the same level of steals, shoots better from the floor and from 3. And then in the playoffs, he averages more points, same rebounds, more assists, a little bit more steals, shoots better from everywhere on the floor.
And you know what? Here's one thing anybody who wanted to detract from that, Keenan, the one argument they would have, and no one can dispute this, is, okay, but you had 2 years when you got Durant and Clay stretching the floor along with Steph. That's such an advantage for all 3 of them.
It is, but you had Shaq. In an era where the scoring wasn't at the same kind of level it is today.
Here's the thing, though.
And he was that dominant.
Who's getting the best perimeter defender on the floor? Kobe.
Steph was getting the best perimeter defender every game. Everyone game planned for Steph. Teams told you that. Like, I'm just saying.
And Durant.
No,
Durant.
But I'm saying your best perimeter defender was going to be on Steph because you couldn't have always on KD because KD's 6'11". So you'd have Steph was getting guarded by the best perimeter defender.
But as was Durant. That's the difference, though. Whereas Kobe, you're always getting Bruce Bowen. You're always getting, whoever top-notch defender, Ron Artest. You're always getting those guys. Shane Battier. That wasn't always the case with specifically those 3 years. You did kind of have to switch it up. If you got a Tony Allen, he's guarding either one of Steph or KD. And, I get it. He's got Shaq. But, Shaq might get triple-teamed. But there was at least balance there. Whereas when you got Clay, Curry, and KD.
But, like, I get it, but there's so much more to Steph's playoff resume than it just those 3 years.
There is, but those 2 years, they were getting stuff incredibly easy. Way more easy than any team should get into their offense. They could get whatever they want, whenever they wanted, because they had KD and Steph and Clay.
And that's why I think that 16-17 is the greatest team to ever play.
That's great.
Great.
I've said this many times, but you could have told us all on July 4th
Well,
that was exactly what was
No,
going
I
on.
understand that. I completely understand that, and I know what you're saying, but I don't think that just completely discredits. Like, I think Steph's done a lot in the playoffs without Durant.
He has. He certainly has.
So that's why I think that there's.
You also got to say those numbers, are they a little juiced because of Durant?
If taking him out, I think he'd still more points, and I know more points in the finals and more assists in the finals. I can tell you that.
For sure.
I'm just saying.
Here's the thing: we don't know. We didn't even get to see either one of those guys fail because they were together those 2 years.
Oh,
I think that's a difference. And, I would use this comparison, though, with Durant. I think that's like if the 08 Pats, if Brady doesn't get injured, if all of a sudden, because they had Junior Seau on the team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think actually 2008, that might have been Gerard Mayo. Was that his rookie year?
I might have been.
So they replaced Junior Seau, who was like an elite level role player at that time. Rest in peace, Junior Seau, because that was his last year in the league, and he used to be top 3, maybe top 1 for sure, middle linebacker in his prime.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they replaced him with Gerard Mayo, who instantly went to like an all-pro level.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was validated as soon as he got in the league, whatever. But to get back to my original point, that'd be like adding Gerard Mayo on defense, because they already had an elite defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
But adding Adrian Peterson to their offense.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if that team, that's what I think Durant, to a 73-9 shooting team, they played to his strengths, and you just add KD to that. It was just completely overpowered.
I agree I agree.
I think that's the only argument you can make against KD and Steph is those years, because especially 17 and 18, those years were just like, why are we watching?
But I was gonna say, I think that, but going through those years, I get with the 2 finals. So like, if you want to say more so, Steph has like 2 real ones. I know obviously in this 17-18 they were down 3-2 to the Rockets, and then they obviously had a game 7 on the road where they did trail decently big in that game in the second half, and then obviously in the finals they swept the Cavs in the finals, but that was really the only turmoil they faced until the 2018 finals when they lost, or 2019 finals when they lost to the Raptors, but that was due to Kevin Durant's injury. But I think that the Steph Curry, his 2022 finals run, and then winning the championship kind of solidified him there for me of being that. And I think a lot of Steph's best playoff moments came without Kevin Durant. Like, if you think his best games, you think, okay, 47 against the Raptors, that Kevin Durant was out for that game, so was Klay Thompson, 43 in TD Garden. Obviously,
that 47 was like
it was good. It was good. No, it was out of necessity. So no,
no hate, but
no. I'm not saying it's not. If I'm going through top 10 playoff games from Steph, it's there. It's not top 5. Like, when I think of very, very memorable games, his I think 16 in overtime against Portland when he dropped 40 the first game back. He had, as I said, the TD Garden game. One that's very memorable was when Durant got injured and he had 33 in the second half against the Rockets. That was his 0 in the first half. He had a huge game, I think game 3 against the Rockets. He had like 44. Obviously, then his early playoff games as well. But a lot of his biggest moments actually have been without Kevin Durant, even though he's had some, like his game 1 against the Clippers in the first one, like 36-16.
And I'm not necessarily arguing his place as much as I'm saying, like, especially when their career is over, depending on how all this ends for everybody involved, it's going to be extremely hard to Durant more than anybody. Mm-hmm. Steph got that ring after Kevin Durant left, but I think those are going to be 2 along with Kawhi, but that's a different story. But those 2 are going to be the hardest to evaluate. Yeah. Steph included. But yeah. But I do want to say I watched the Fever versus Sky earlier. That was a great game. I watched
I was playing basketball during it, but I did watch the like intense, like elongated highlights of that because I needed to see it. It
was great. I mean, I've watched a few WNBA games, but that one I literally watched like every dribble. Mm-hmm. And Caitlin, man, once she gets, and her team's good, like they're all professionals, right? But once she gets like a squad around her, it's going to be scary. Because
Aaliyah Boston,
she's starting to figure it out.
Aaliyah Boston has figured out playing with Caitlin, so they're game together. Aaliyah Boston started the year poor, but then they have Alyssa Smith has been solid for them. Kelsey Mitchell, who's been an all-star before, she's been balling as of late. And if they can add themselves a 6'1" wing who can defend, who can play good defense, but also kind of can take you off the dribble, it's going to be scary. Because when Caitlin Clark's hitting logo threes and giving you this face, like, I don't know what happened. But Angel Reese is also, I got to say, Reese has definitely played better than I thought she was going to this first year.
I'll say
She's been
this.
a dog, as she called herself.
Caitlin Clark was the best player on the floor through 3 quarters, and Angel Reese was by far the best player on the court in the 4th quarter.
Yeah.
I'm falling in love with Angel Reese's game. She plays like goddamn Charles Oakley, Boris Grant, Charles Barkley, whatever. I mean, she is a skilled rebounder. She has such a rough low post game. She lowers that right shoulder, gets that little hook over her left shoulder. I'm enjoying her watching her in the WNBA. She's doing exactly what she did in college, but if you heard our review of the LSU Iowa?
Yep.
Yeah. LSU versus the rematch.
Yep.
I was so disgusted with, Kim Mulkey was goddamn running post entries from the elbow. Like, they were using 0 spacing.
Yeah.
Whereas they're running the same offense for her and Camila Cardozo. But they're at least, like, seeing it from the 3-point line. Like, they have space to operate. So it's a much cleaner operation in the WNBA before.
They have Kennedy Carter, who can take the ball off the bounce, and then they have Mabry.
Nice.
They have Mabry, who can hit threes on the outside, too. So, like,
someone on the broadcast called Kennedy Carter the most talented player in the league. And I was like, that's a statement right there. Not that I've watched a ton of WNBA, but
I still think that's Asia Wilson, but that's...
So I'm excited to dive in to this WNBA season. It's going to lead us right into the Olympics.
Yep.
Then coming out of the Olympics, we'll have more WNBA. We'll have the NFL. We've got a great fight this weekend in the UFC. So it's already a good summer.
Yeah.
Otani's killing it as the leadoff hitter for the Dodgers. It's great. It's
Absolutely.
great. We've got a lot of great stuff sports-wise heading our way. But I'm extremely excited because you can see Caitlin Clark is much more confident, as you'd expect. A month and a half now.
There's no more back-to-backs. She has played every team at least once, so she understands the physicality of every team, what they're going to bring. She's had time to practice now. She's had time to rest a little bit, which is why I think even though she's missing USA, she's going to have a month to just tune the game. I mean, she talked about it in an interview right after. She's like, I'm actually kind of looking forward to it so I can kind of work on the things that I need to.
It might be scary.
When she comes back from that, and she has a chip on her shoulder from it, she said, when they come back, it's going to look a little bit like Iowa. I'm not saying it's going to be 32-8-7. It might be around 19-6-8. Which in the WNBA, that's actual numbers. And then I'm just hoping they make the playoffs, because if they make I think they should. They're in it right now, and the way they've been playing as of late, they should be in the playoffs. And if they are,
when's their All-Star weekend?
There's voting for it now. I think it's in a few weeks.
So it's before the Olympics?
I think it's before the Olympics.
So we'll get to see a Sabrina Caitlin Clark 3-point contest.
Absolutely. And Caitlin's obviously going to be in the game. Because the cool thing that they do is they do Team USA versus the All-Stars. So so that's going to be a Team USA versus the All-Stars.
So we're going to see Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark versus Team USA. Because I really do think, I know I said it's not a big deal that she was left off, but if they're really trying to build a program, you could take 2 of the top players. Because, I mean, that's basically what this is a top 12 team in their case. You could take whoever the bottom 2 is out of that top 12.
Yeah, I think that Team USA in that scrimmage, I think you could have probably taken off if you were going to. Taurasi is tough because, obviously she's going for a 6, which is
she's like the captain.
She's like the captain of that team. It would have been... I'm trying to think of the bottom of the roster because you have Kelsey Plum, but Kelsey Plum is the champion. You can't really take her out. It's hard to take people off of that, but you could have. Everyone on that team was deserving, but I do get why you could add Caitlin, and you could have added Angel too. I think that Angel's a draw as well as herself. I think
Caitlin and Angel, if you're building a program, they should have been the last 2 spots. But now I'm looking forward to this All-Star game now. If you're telling me we're going to get Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, and Arike.
Enrique Ogunbowale will be on that. Absolutely. Dewana Bonner. There's got like the All-Star team's going to be nasty. De'Erica Hamby.
I might have to go to All-Star Weekend. Maybe I'll make that one of my summer plans.
Also, shout out to Cameron Brink. Get healthy. She tore her ACL, so that's tough. I mean, also it's tough for her too because she was going to compete in the Olympics this year. So
I wonder who she's replaced with. I'm sure they replaced her already. Excuse me, can't talk.
I hadn't seen
who
they
replaced her already.
I haven't seen who they replaced her with.
And I wish, because I know they had 3 actual WNBA players.
Mm-hmm.
I wish the NBA would put actual NBA players on our 3-on-3 team. Like we got like basically former D1 guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think at one point it was Jimmer, and it still might be Jimmer on the team. Which if so, that's cool.
Yeah,
but like, why not just throw Paul George and 2 other guys out there?
It would be cool.
One thing, and we'll talk Olympics the closer we get. I am ecstatic over that.
I am too.
Basketball tournament. That's going to be better than the NBA playoffs, I think.
It will.
By the way, but you see this? Luka's going to play.
I did not see that, but good.
Not injured. That's all I'll say. Clearly not injured if he's playing here in 3 weeks. So you got that. Less than 3 weeks because the Olympics start in 3 weeks. I think you still got qualifying maybe a week or so before that. Could be wrong. But man, you got Team Canada, obviously Team USA, Luka and Slovenia, Jokic and where the hell is he from? Is he from Lithuania? I think he's from Lithuania. So you got them. Greece, Giannis. I'm not sure if they're in it.
That I have no idea.
Could be wrong. Ben Simmons could have been on Australia. That would have been fun. We'll never get that, apparently.
No.
And guess what? If Embiid would have classified for France instead of the U.S., they said they were going to run a lineup of Rudy, Wemby, and Embiid. I wish we would have got that. Well,
we would have lost.
We still might. France is nice.
We would have lost.
We might have.
Listen, LeBron and Steph are cool and all, but we would have lost.
I cannot wait for these Olympics. But yeah, I wish our 3-on-3 would be a little better.
Mm-hmm.
But it isn't. So it's no. I cannot wait for the 5-on-5 tournament.
It's gonna be great.
It's gonna be gret.
Absolutely.
Hopefully the hours align. But yes, this was the Warner Brothas Podcast. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all that good stuff.
Absolutely.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We'll be back relatively soon.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be talking more NFL, more NBA. We're gonna get more creative on here. We got a lot of stuff up our sleeves, so we'll be back. Everyone be safe. Signing off.
Like a man.